We are connecting with the overseas office in Thailand, Vietnam, and India of JICA, and more than 40 people participating, including people with disabilities. And simultaneous interpreting is available, channel 1 for Japanese and channel 2 for English. On behalf of JICA, Mr. Takashi Kaneko, JICA Director, is going to say a few words to open this seminar. Upon opening of the seminar, on behalf of the organizers, let me say a few words. JICA has been supporting the human resource development and nation building in developing countries, and we have been providing international cooperation in many different areas. For support to people with disabilities since the 1970s, we in the area of care and also the physical therapy, we dispatched experts. Vocational physical therapists project have also been started since 2000 to promote the participation of persons with disability into international cooperation. Cooperation reaching them has been requested for, and the Japanese government has been promoting the new Asia-Pacific decade for persons with disability, and APCD project, or Asia Pacific Development Center on Disability project, has been launched. APCD in countries of the Asia Pacific region has been promoting empowerment of the persons with disability and also promote barrier-free society. In 2002, it was established in Bangkok in Thailand. In the past 5 years, through cooperation activities, it overcame difficulties to be successful as a very fruitful project. Japanese experts and Thai staff members worked very closely to achieve the great results. Initially, there was a repetition of trials and errors, and there have been a lot of efforts put into this project. The driver for the success of this project is the strong determination of the people involved to achieve something, and also to provide mutual support with each other, and also a sense of unity. Within the team, there was a very strong relationship of trust, and Mr. Ninomiya, as a leader, and others made a lot of efforts. So we'd like to show our sincere respect to their efforts. As a specific achievement, APCD training has been held, and thanks to the urging of the participants, people with intellectual disabilities who have never went outside of the home for 40 years were able to go out, and also a Bangkok subway was built, and the biggest shopping mall in Asia, in the Philippines, became barrier-free. So in each of the participating countries, leaders who can promote social changes are being developed, so we are very pleased to see the results. Persons with disabilities have their perspective, and we try to implement their perspective in the field, and there has been a very innovative approach by APCD. For example, the persons with disabilities are not the receivers of the services, but they are very important parties to promote social changes, and that has been made sure of in the project. And also, persons with disabilities are playing the main character, and Japanese experts try to provide support in the back and promoted empowerment. In today's seminar, a key person of this project, Mr. Montian Buntan, President of the Thailand Association of the Blind, Mr. Akie Ninomiya, APCD Project Chief Advisor, have been invited. and they are going to report the impact. And also, we have Ms. Hiroko Akiyama, Director General of the Hino IO Center, is participating as well, and she is going to give us her perspective as a Japanese. And also, from Hitotsubashi University, Professor Ikujiro Nonaka, Professor Emeritus, is going to give us a keynote speech despite his very busy schedule. 2 years ago, he toured the APCD activity field, and from the knowledge creation perspective, he evaluated the actual things in practice. In the panel discussion, we have Mr. Hideki Kawada, a doctoral candidate of Hitotsubashi University, participating as well. In the coming 5 years, from this month, APCD has entered a new phase. The trend of the social change should be promoted, and what has been difficult in the previous phase will also be promoted, such as paying more attention to people with other disabilities. Through this seminar, Phase 1 achievements will be shared with the participants in the hall, and we would like to talk about what has been the reasons for the changes and what should be the initiatives we should take for the future. That's something we are hoping to discuss with you all. So we appreciate your active participation today, and thank you very much for coming once again. So the first speaker is Mr. Aki Ninomiya, APCD Project Chief Advisor. The title of his presentation is the International Cooperation Work with Persons with Disabilities. During the Vietnam War, he went into the border area between Laos and Cambodia to work as a medical coordinator. He accumulated experience in the international cooperation, and he also served to teach at Kansai Gakuin University. And he brought the success for the APCD project. So Mr. Ninomiya, please. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I came from the APCD. I am the Chief Advisor. My name is Ninomiya. Thank you very much for coming, despite your very busy schedule. For the past 5 years, you have provided us with great support, experts, and other people who extended their cooperation are here. So we'd like to show appreciation to you all. And thanks to the great support by JICA, we have been able to come this far in this project. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all. There has been a great paradigm shift in this project, as Mr. Kaneko mentioned earlier. In the welfare and development, persons with disabilities were actually the main players, and persons with disability have been able to make this much progress in the APCD. Professor Nonaka is going to talk about the knowledge creation theory, and I am told to make or speak about the stories, and there have been some keywords I'd like to use. APCD has government policy makers and the persons with disabilities as the main entities or main players, and the grassroots people and the experts. APCD have been creating a forum for them. They met together to discuss together to implement something. So APCD is a forum to create opportunities for them to get together. And we try to connect people, and for persons with disabilities, in their perspective, we try to develop a program. And also, we focused on the process from the forum of meeting, and then moving on to the next stage, we try to follow up the processes to create a lot of spirals or waves in the Asian region. Throughout the past 5 years, human security, safety, and empowerment has a key, that is commitment. Persons with disability have a great commitment, and that has been a great encouragement to us. And we at APCD has a very clear position about disability. This is about disability and development. There, in the middle, you can see the persons with disabilities, and on the right is the micro area. The left-hand side is macro area, including DNA cells and organs such as ears or eyes. Pregnant women have a DNA test to check whether her upcoming babies are going to have any disabilities or not. And medical, vocational, and educational rehabilitation is provided. And there's a focus on the disabilities, but in our APCD, we focus on the regions, and regional development, social development are promoted in this scheme. Therefore, in the region, there are people with hearing impairment or visual impairment, or also persons without any disabilities, and they should be able to live together without any barriers. They should be able to have a very affluent, rich life. And persons with disabilities should be able to participate in such a society with a bottom-up approach. And that should be a policy with a top-down initiative, reaching the middle management as well. Persons with disabilities, there has been a traditional view of disabilities as the ancestors' sin or curse, and disability was considered as a result of the sin, particularly in Asia, and persons with disabilities have to remove such a view. But APCD's view of disabilities is social resources, empowerment, coexistence. As Mr. Kaneko said, a sense of unity or coexistence are very important as a value, and they should be policy makers, and they have to be the promoter of social development projects. And our scheme comes from within society. We have to provide self-respect, confidence, independence to the persons with disability. They have to be able to regain self-respect, confidence, independent spirit, responsibilities for their own life, so that they can be a main player and in communications, transportation, and barriers must be removed in society. And we want to have a bottom-up approach to promote grassroots development, and together with the national policy makers, we also take a top-down approach to do the middle management. In January this year, in Papua New Guinea, we did the CBS HOD training, so let me talk about this matter.
Why is it that we chose Papua New Guinea? It was not that APCD chose this country, but there is a Person with Disabilities International, which is related to the United Nations. Why Papua New Guinea? Because there is no organization for the PWDs. There is no policy on part of the government. That's why we're going to do it. JICA does not prefer where there is nothing, because JICA does prefer where the government has a policy, but it's the reverse way around. There's nothing. Why? That's why Papua New Guinea was selected. We sent a mission so as to see whether this can be doable. we met Topon-san, Mr. Topon, who has severe disabilities on a wheelchair. And according to the report, it said that we shall succeed. We believed in those words, and in March, together with the responsible person from the Thai government and Mr. Topon, we made an appointment with the minister. Since there are no organization for the PWDs, we got in touch with different organizations, different government bodies, and a year later, we said that this is what we like to do and asked them to participate in the preparation committee. This is to create a bar, a venue, an opportunity. We have ministers from the development as well as the grassroots PWDs. And all of these have come together so as to see what we can do in creating a new CBS HOD. We have 15 countries from Asia to participate, so that whether it is from the health or the education, we have the representatives from the respective ministries. There were no self-help organization for the PWDs. So Mr. Topon said there is a fishing village by the name of Padi, and he met the PWDs in that community and decided that we should go ahead to carry out the peer counseling to create a small-scale independent living center. And they were successful in coming up with a small organization in the village, whether it is with the people or the children. They had lots of communication so as to see that we wanted to create a new village. And this was underway for a year or so. And CB Shot was to be created, but just on the eve, as you see here, we have the representatives of the government to your right, who are from the Resources and Social Development, Ompon-san, and next to me is Minister of Social Development, Minister Kido, and DPI Asian Pacific Chairman, Nakanishi-san, and to the very left is from Papua New Guinea, Cassie-san, who is the representative of the PWDs. And that's how we have started with the communication. Well, many companies have donated and made contribution, and whether Minister Kido or the representatives of the PWDs from Papua New Guinea or some of the representatives from APCD, we had a press conference. And at the airport, there was a welcome in which persons with disabilities have managed the whole event. And in Papua New Guinea, at Port Moresby Airport, it has become accessible for those with disabilities. And since this is an ODA project from Japan, we asked the ambassador from Japan to give us an opportunity to discuss with him. To the left, you see him in a relaxed outfit. That's the ambassador. And Topon-san and the representative from the Thai government, and Nakanishi-san from the International PWD organization. And many a times we had discussions among these people in which the government of Japan said they were interested in Papua New Guinea so as to render assistance in order to provide assistance to the PWD. On the very day of the opening ceremony, from the hotel where we stayed, representatives from 15 countries, inclusive of those from the government, and it was the people and the government of Papua New Guinea, the bottom up, and the representatives of the government had walked for an hour so that we shall create a barrier-free and inclusive society. It was a demonstration which was taken up in the TVs, newspapers, and other mass media. We had the musical band from the police and people in ethnic costume. It was, in a sense, partially a festival, but partially an advocacy event. The women's organization sang for us to welcome us, and at the same time, together with the participation of the citizens, APCD seminar was held together with the government of Papua New Guinea and the PWDs, so that it would be held together with the Pacific PWD Forum. This is the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, the Ambassador from Japan, Minister Kido, representative from the Thai government. At the same time, we had many high-ranking officials from other ministries as well. This is our training, in which many of the states from Pacific have come to participate, in which all the participants were those responsible for the PWD organizations. We spent a week in discussing many subjects, but basically we said that it is the person with disabilities who are going to contribute in developing the society, so that it will be a society that will be comfortable for all. This is a group discussion in which people from different countries share their headaches, difficulties, and how to make society more barrier-free. And not limited to that, we went to the beach where many citizens would go, so that we advocated that the beaches should also be barrier-free. We've done preparation for the last 3 months, so that together with the city government and city-related organization, we've created a ramp. And in the Padi village, all of these people, citizens, are Christians. So at the church, together with the church members and members of the village, we said that we want to do this together with all of it, so that the community will be comfortable for everybody. We have Minister Kido, Mr. Pon, and other persons with disabilities who have discussed together with the members of the village that they like to make the village comfortable for everybody. This is at the church, in which one of the persons with disability has started a disability accessibility pilot project so as to establish a ramp so that people can get into the church. And in his village, we also created a ramp. This was a model case. And this is the ban by persons with disability. They even had the CD. At the closing ceremony, Minister Kido has said the Papua New Guinea government has announced the policy for the person with disabilities. Before this, they had no budget, no policy. However, $140,000 was contributed as a budget for policies to be implemented for persons with disabilities, with CB shot as a trigger. And they have come up with a policy so as to assist people with disability at the village level, together with the people of the village. They wanted to make the village comfortable so that it will be accessible for all. At the top level, the national government has come up with a policy for persons with disability. So it's bottom up, top down, and also middle management. Networking and association. In 32 countries, we have 140 cooperating NGOs, and we have about 180 organizations in total. We have about 630 trainees who have come from 26 countries. And we decided that this should be a South-South cooperation in which the government, the NGOs, as well as the Organization for Persons with Disabilities, United Nations, as well as other international organizations are going to create a forum, a bar, to cooperate with each other. And what we wanted to do is to create many such fora. And we have succeeded. So the government, the NGOs, the private organizations, the experts have created a forum which has provided an impact. And we would have a social policy to be created. We were able to get the budget for it. And there were many good examples that followed. This is this spring in Kyrgyz, which is Central Asian country, in which the Minister of Social Development and Labor, fourth person from the left, and the representative from Thai government, representative from JICA, the chief of APCD, Spontamsam, who is on a wheelchair, have visited Kyrgyz on behalf of APCD. and we have established a forum or a bar. And in autumn this year, we are going to have CB Shot preparatory committee to be established in Kyrgyz, so that probably in autumn next year, just as what we have succeeded in Papua New Guinea is hopefully to be repeated in Kyrgyz. We cherish the networking so that whether with the World Bank, this is a seminar for women with disabilities. And another characteristics I would like to share, which you will see in the next slide, is that whether in the education or the occupational therapy, we have first started with people with mild disability, but we decided to do the other way around. People with the most severe disabilities, because the more severe the disabilities, the bigger the impact, which is something we've learned as a lesson during the last 5 years. We have Ms. Akiyama, who is a JICA expert, who would tell us that this is very true. Now, if it's top-down, as the approach had been in the past, we would start with people with mild disabilities and never get through to people with severe disabilities. We need to tap onto those who are bedridden for the last 30 or 40 years at home. But we would like to include them. And we felt that persons with severe disabilities are going to be the resources of the society, so that they are to be involved, they are to serve as leaders. And for the experts from JICA on a short term, we have many persons with disabilities, some with quite a serious disability, as Ms. Akiyama is an excellent example. There are many, many individual living centers that have come about. We do have the counterparts from the Japanese government in local host nations. The woman in the middle used to be a cabin crew of Japan Airlines, but she had an accident and she has become a very important resource, being paralyzed from neck down. The gentleman to your right is paralyzed from chest down. And this gentleman to your right has established 2 centers, which is a big, big impact. So that as an APCD, I believe that this is more or less good preview of what Professor Nonaka is to say. Thank you so much. Next, from Hitotsubashi University, I'd like to invite Professor Ikujiro Nonaka, who is a Professor Emeritus, and he's going to give us a presentation of APCD and intellectual creation. He looks at the companies as they are the top-class companies. They look at how the knowledge is being created, and at the same time, he serves as a speaker for JICA seminars as well as other seminars. Professor Nonaka, please, the floor is yours. 21st century is said to be the century of knowledge. When you say knowledge, what is it? Simply put, knowledge means that it is the thoughts and belief of each individual, or it could be said as a commitment of each individual, which is going to be communicated and sent to the society, in which it is a dynamic process in itself. Especially if you look into the knowledge, what is very, very important is that what is called the tacit knowing. We can know more than we can tell, in which more than what we can express in words, that in itself is tip of the iceberg, in which most cannot be expressed verbally, so that I would say the majority is tacit knowledge. All the knowledge is more or less tacit knowledge, or it could be said as experiences, in which experiences is the base and the source of all knowledge. In a sense, when you talk about experiences, it is a unified, specific whole. So, the knowledge is accumulated by each individual so that we make the society more rich. And in it, we need the tacit knowledge as well as we need the explicit knowledge, which is to be expressed verbally. These two kinds of knowledge are going to be complementary to each other so that between the tacit and the explicit knowledge, there needs to be conversion at all times so that the knowledge for the whole society is going to be richer as a result. When you talk about tacit knowledge, it rests with the individual based upon the individual experiences. However, once it is expressed in words, well, when you say words, it's not just plain words, but it could also include symbolic expressions, inclusive of sign languages as well as body languages, and these are also part of the explicit knowledge, so that each individual is going to express his or her experience and at the same time to share that so that we make the knowledge richer for the society as a whole. And by doing so, you would also enrich your own knowledge. And I would say that is how we should live in this knowledge society.
When we talk about knowledge, as Mr. Kaneko and Mr. Ninomiya mentioned earlier, commitment. You shouldn't be just an observer, but you have to be an agent and a main player. To be involved with society, such a commitment is very important. And commitment is mainly tacit knowledge or ideas or feelings. So in that respect, tacit knowledge is extremely important. If you put it into words, there are some who are very good at it, and others are not really. I like baseball manager, Mr. Shigeo Nagashima, but he's not very good at expressing his feelings with words. But on the other hand, there are other baseball managers who are very good at expressing their thoughts in words. At any rate, tacit and explicit knowledge are on the other side of the coin, so how to express these two areas together is very important. Generally speaking, creating knowledge in a society is important. First, intuition. You have to feel with your whole body. That is what we call socialization. And that should be expressed in a certain way that is called externalization. Then each individual's experiences can be shared by many people. And by analyzing them, they can be expanded. And also, they can be put to practice. Socialization, externalization, combination, and internalization are the processes. This is what we call SEKI model. Socialization, externalization, combination, and internalization. At any rate, each individual has unique experiences in a certain way or another that should be externalized to make it available to society. And then all the knowledges are linked to each other and related to each other. So in that relationship, such knowledge must be put to practice, shared, and expanded. Such flow should not be stopped. Each person must become an agent to make commitments, and they're very valuable precious experiences and knowledge must be shared and expanded. Then social knowledge can be enriched and the persons themselves can grow further. That's the knowledge society in the 21st century. That is one model for living. This is a simplified chart. What's important is the visions. What is good for society and the vision for common good must be shared. Every day, sharing experiences, dialogue should be implemented, and through this process, there should be an actual implementation of putting something to practice. Through such behavior, tacit and explicit knowledge can be expanded. That is a model of a knowledge-creating society. Through bar or forum, dialogue, objectives, and practices must be enhanced. And here, leadership becomes very significant. In the 21st century, in a knowledge society, charismatic leader is not all the time necessary. Each person must be a leader. Each person must be an agent or leader. This is what we call distributed leadership. Distributed leadership. Each person must feel that they have a leadership to participate in the knowledge creation in society. That is the style of the leadership in the 21st century. There is one important concept here, that is phronesis. This is Greek, used by Aristotle. Prudence, the prudence by the wise people, prudence. And also practical wisdom are the meanings of phronesis. When I first touched on this issue for the first time, many people thought that you take a bath and go to sleep and then pass away because of the phonetic of the Japanese word phronesis. With such a philosophy, for in the state of each individual, there should be the best judgment and action to be taken. So phronesis means such capability. It's not just a mere knowledge, but it's a practical wisdom. In society, the society is changing all the time, and the same situation can never happen again. Under such circumstances, you have to use your prudence to make judgment and decide. And you have to enhance your knowledge to wisdom. Such efforts are very important, and people often talk about the wisdom of the mothers, and experience plays a very important role. Such leadership should be achieved, and what should we keep in mind to have such leadership? And these are the 6 conditions or abilities that constitute great leadership. First is the ability to make a judgment on goodness and have a sense of ethics. The second is the ability to create a forum or ba. The third is the ability to grasp the essence of a certain field or particular situations. And the fourth is the ability to express something in words, including symbols. There can be nonverbal or physical communications. Pictures and diagrams could also be used to express something. So this is such ability as the fourth point. Fifth is the ability to implement such concept or words. And sixth is the ability to communicate, not just to keep it to yourself, but to share with all the other people. Each is very abstract, so I'd like to give you more specific examples to explain each ability required. The first is the ability to make a judgment on goodness, to judge what is good. Aristotle said in the Nicomachean Ethics that every sort of expert knowledge and every inquiry, and similarly every action undertaken, seems to seek some good. And because of that, people are right to affirm that the good is that which all things seek. And what is good? Happiness, and also self-realization. In either of the case, something with a value which is not just a mere means to satisfy yourselves. Money is not happiness, because money is a mere means or method. So for what purpose do you obtain money? You have to ask this question. Money is a relative value or a mere means. And Aristotle, philosophy has been made more modern by McIntyre. He said, virtue or happiness is something you try to achieve those standards of excellence eternally. So it can be found in the eternal efforts, and you can find happiness in that. These are the six abilities or conditions for leadership. I am specializing in business administration, so I'd like to use the wording or statement by business leaders. By sharing their images, I'd like to give you further examples. A typical leader is Mr. Soichiro Honda. He is the founder of Honda Motors. He is not a university graduate. He is an artisan. But from our perspective, he has a great prudence or frenetic leader to create a company called Honda, a car manufacturer. As for the ability to judge what is good, you may think that car manufacturing is just mere technologies, but he says that's not really the case. What's important is the philosophy of people. According to him, money and technologies are just one of the means to serve human beings. Technologies which are not based on human are meaningless, according to Mr. Honda. The philosophy of the workers is very important. Even at the research institute, the philosophy of the workers is more important than the technologies. And he said that the true technology is a crystal of philosophy. At APCD, activities have been done, and we are also studying APCD. Persons with disabilities have a lot of potentials, and they are very variable, precious human resources with lots of potentials. That is the philosophy of APCD, and by continuing dialogue and practice, each person's very precious knowledge, tacit knowledge, is turned into explicit knowledge to continue dispatching such knowledge for the sake of the good of society. There is a task force with counterparts from the government, international level leaders of the groups of persons with disabilities, persons with severe disabilities, acting at grassroots level, JICA experts, and other people in different positions constitute the task force. And they continue to dispatch information to society to realize their goals. And the second ability is the ability to create a forum. Bar or forum is to share the relationship.
And whatever the knowledge it may be, it is linked with other knowledge. In Buddhism, we have the word en, or relationship, which means that there is a relationship between things. And one knowledge is related to the knowledge of others, and we live in a world of relationships. Thus, we need to create a society rich with knowledge, which means that we need to look at the roots of the very existence of man, whether care, love, trust. People sometimes call this as a social capital. And this is to be created in a bar or forum. The language and the words we use, as well as non-verbal communication, are to be utilized to understand, to sympathize and empathize with others, so that we look at the timing of mutual intervention and look at the limit of how much intervention can be made. And by balancing those two, we shall be able to create the right social relationship. We need to be able to share this, otherwise the knowledge is not going to get any richer. Let me add on further in looking at the relationships. What is the most important in this relationship is here and now relationship. I am alive right now, and in this very space and in this very time zone, I am sharing the experiences. That is bar or forum. But it's true, in this bar or forum, I am speaking, and I'm the only one who is speaking at the moment, but we need to have a bar or forum where we could share. Why is it, as we look at the here and now relationship, is that important? Because if you look at the past, you see the past embedded in the present. Moreover, in the present, we have knowledge just of the past, but also the possibility of the future as well. Thus, what we can do now is that here and now, we need to share with all our minds and body the relationship. And that is what is to be called as creation of the bar or the forum. There are different systems which would promote creation of the bar or the forum. APCD is one example in which has many systems to create forum and bar, like the informal project team, offices, organizations, emails. And what is the easiest is to share some time through alcohols, beverages, because that is one of the easiest way and probably the best way of sharing the space and time. At least that's my feeling. And I'm sure such kind of bar or forum is being provided to all of you. Now let me be a bit more specific. According to Mr. Soichiro Honda, he was very good in cracking jokes. He knew the opportunity, the timing to crack a joke. Whether it's verbal or non-verbal communication, Mr. Honda was very superb in grasping the right moment to say and to crack jokes. Oh, there's another company called Canon. Mr. Mitarai, who is the chairman of Japan Business Federation, heads Canon. But from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock every morning, he would organize a morning meeting without any scheduled agenda. Anybody can bring up a subject or agenda to be discussed. If you do so, then everybody would share with what he or she feels to be the most important at that point of time. Or it may be just an image or perception that one feels to be the most important. And everybody would talk about that, and by sharing that, you will be able to create a forum after another. And that bar, or the forum, is going to be related to other bars and forum, so that the morning meeting is going to serve as a basis in which it would be used for the management committee, executive management meeting, president's luncheon meeting, sending messages through the emails. There are going to be so many fora which are multi-layered, as you can see in this slide, which is something that is quite important. In other words, it is so important to have so many bar, and that is going to be the most important condition to enrich our knowledge. Why is it that this is possible? Well, if you look at the relationship between a person and the next, there are certain sets of rules. There is the 6 degree of separation rule. Even if you are far away physically, and even if it's someone that you've never met, if you have 6 mediators, you shall be able to link with others. In a way, the world is small after all. So that's the role of the small world network. It's a small world, as the famous saying goes. It's a smaller world than you think, in which everybody's linked to others. And whoever is going to be the center, if you have 6 mediators, then the whole world is going to change and be affected. Should I use the word connectors, or should I use the word tipping points? If you go through these mediators, then one after the next, you can further enrich this society, which I believe to be very important. If you look at the network of each individual, there could be 6 connectors who are going to mediate yourself and the world. As a result, the whole world is going to be influenced. At APCD, what is it being done? The capability to create bar or forum. Peer counseling is an excellent example, as we know that this is so important. And the late Mr. Topon, and together with Hideki-san, who is here, Mr. Kawada, they have come up with it, in which persons with severe disabilities are going to share the bar or forum so as to share their difficulties and their concerns. Peer counseling is so important, in which it is to open up the closed mind. And as a result, the potential of human is going to be made richer and richer. This is carried out by peer counseling, and that's why peer counseling is so very important. Furthermore, if we look at persons with severe disabilities, there are some tacit knowledge which only could be shared by persons with severe disabilities. And if you look at an ant and a mosquito, an ant has more power, but this kind of knowledge which may be shared by one would not be understood by others. That's why the peer counseling is so superb. And this is something that we have learned so as to further deepen the knowledge through peer counseling. Having done so, if you look at the activities and implementation of APCD, you would see that we are creating one bar after another, both vertically and horizontally in Asia and the Pacific, so as to link one bar with the other. It wasn't a flashy movement, but rather very steady. It is more or less a process. It is more or less events or process in which it is a lively sort of continuity. It is the events which are more important than the object, and the events are linked to one another. That's something that needs to be understood. In other words, there's a link between a person and the other in which the process is moving, in which it serves as a verb so as to further change and enrich the next bar. And I would say that is the capability on part of bar. One person alone would never be able to do so. Each person is a leader. Each person serves as an agent, so that each person makes a commitment to his or her own bar so as to expand the relationship. As a result, we shall be able to create the knowledge for the society. The third capability is that we look at the capability to know the actual situation in which the environment is changing, the reality is changing at all times, and you need to place yourself in that changing environment. It shouldn't be abstract. It shouldn't be merely analytical, because that kind of knowledge is not good enough, because reality is micro, in which the reality is alive, and God is in the detail, in which all the details which are changing daily are the source of the truth for the future. You need to go to the actual situation, the actual environment, to be able to feel it intuitively. Mr. Soichiro Honda came up with a new idea one after another, and he came up with innovative technology to be realized in the automotive industry. But he loved to be at the site, the actual site. He was always there. In Detroit, there's a Hall of Fame for those who have made contribution to the automotive industry. Once again, this is in Detroit, and Mr. Soichiro Honda corner is positioned in the Hall of Fame. There are two wonderful pictures. This is a good example, should I say, This is what you see. Look at him. He's on his knees, on his feet, so that he looks at the same perspective as the rider, so that he gets to feel the reality as though he's the rider himself. Furthermore, it's not that he's just watching and seeing things. He comes up with his own assumptions, and he would raise the question, is this true or is that true? In other words, he looks at the minute details of everyday life in which he shall be able to see the truth. And he would have that perspective when he goes to the actual situation to feel it with his intuition. At the same time, this is the quote from the head of 7-Eleven Japan, the convenience authority to place an order, because each is to come up with an assumption and to verify that at the same time. They have been trained to be able to do so. And here you see the quote from CEO of 7-Eleven Japan, Mr. Toshifumi Suzuki. It's not good enough to see just a tree, not a forest. Of course, you have to see one single tree, but at the same time, you need to look at the entire forest at the same time. What does it mean? It is important to see the minute details in the practical environment, but at the same time, you need to simultaneously try to look at the concept that governs that from a higher, or should I say, a bigger perspective.
This is the quote of Mr. Hinomiya. The ability to notice the reality, and in medical care, physiotherapy, special training, human development, we have so many specialties. If you are a specialist, you may not know the details in a narrow area. Human beings are holistic entities, but by specialization through division of work, if you just look from the eyes of the specialists or experts, you will not be able to see the total picture, and you will not use such a framework to look at the social participation by PWD, marriage, sports, TV, watching TV, music. Everything is part of life, and everything lies in the life events. Many different people get together, and in the big whole environment, you look at the essence of individuals. And then at the same time, you have to create a bigger relationship, and such capability is required. The fourth capability required is to the ability or capability to reconstruct the particulars into universals using language, concepts, and narratives to create stories using the intuition through dialogue or nonverbal communications, change it into concepts and turn it into words. The tacit knowledge by each individual must be turned into concept or words and send it to the politicians as well. And there were such occasions in the past. Creating stories is very important, big stories. This is another picture, a very good picture of Mr. Soichiro Honda. This is a picture to show his intuition. He is at the actual site of manufacturing, and what he noticed is drawn as a picture on the floor. And he always have the same level of his eye with the person he is talking to. You shouldn't look down on the others or look up to the others, but you have to be partners. If you have the same perspective, then you can feel the same way with the others. And by having his eyes at the same level with the person he's talking to, he's using a drawing, he's drawing something on the floor, and he's doing this at the site of the manufacturing. And then innovations and new ideas were generated one after another. This is another quote of Mr. Soichiro Honda. Without a good philosophy or concept, it can be very dangerous. Action without philosophy is a lethal weapon. Philosophy without action is meaningless, so you need both, according to Mr. Soichiro Honda. That's what he told his employees all the time. This is a quote of Mr. Mitarai from Canon. Targets are based on numbers, but there should be a flow or process. Numbers are not so important. What's important is the verb or action or event. When you talk about such events, there should be some stories you have in mind. So Mr. Mitarai told each one of the employees to develop such a story themselves. This is what Ms. Ito said when I met her. Commitment and sympathy by PWD should be a key in creating a concept. Extremely important, unique experiences of the individuals must be used as a concept. You have to involve citizens in the community, and there should be feelings based on the feelings, and humans' sympathy must be dispatched to society, and then new knowledge can be generated and deployed to the entire society, one after another. At APCD, how to turn what each individual noticed into words or concepts. This is something you should ask more about in the panel discussion later, rather than asking me. This is a wonderfully developed model. This is Ito-san's slide, I think. The fifth ability is as follows. Concept, ideas, feelings must be implemented. If you don't take action to implement, it doesn't mean anything. Knowledge can be created only through implementation or execution. Without implementation, just having a concept isn't very meaningful. It's like a meeting of the university professors. They do have a discussion, but nothing can be decided nothing can be executed. There should be execution, or there should be a verb in a sentence. Then, for the first time, the whole word can change. If it's just a noun, it's fixed. The authority is generated, and it becomes static to a standstill. And execution is a process. What's important is to have courage. And if necessary, you may have to exercise your political power under certain circumstances. And by sharing a forum with political leaders for dialogue and sympathy, such opportunities were created very actively, and I think that's extremely important. You have to have the courage and enthusiasm, and may need to implement your political power. In the case of Honda, Mr. Soichiro Honda said he was the person who also fought against the government for the sake of the common good in society. Contradictions or conflicts can be the source of innovations. This is a quote from Mr. Mitarai at Canon. You have to convince others through communication. You have to continue communication. That must be implemented on a daily basis. That's also part of leadership, according to Mr. Mitarai. At APCD, what's implemented? There are mission teams, including government officials, leaders of the international groups of persons with disabilities, persons with severe disabilities. At grassroots, many people work as agents, show their commitment to show leadership. And as for the role of staff members in APCD, they try to provide support and facilitate. And the sixth capability required is as follows. Without executing this leadership, you cannot have a great power. From first to the fifth, that can be affected much by the characteristic of each individual. But as for the sixth capability, you have to share the capability of each individual, because the essence of human being, or the nature of human being, is based on unique experiences others cannot really copy. Each one of us has such unique experiences. If that is the case, unique experiences can be shared with others, and you can have a link among them to create a bigger knowledge for the sake of society, and also people in society, to create a more open society. In reality, there is bureaucracy in organizations. Sharing knowledge can be inhibited. That's one of the problems of the organizations. Why you don't share? Some people think that it's detrimental to share knowledge, but actually, if you give more knowledge, you can receive more knowledge from others. That's the nature of knowledge. How many times you use the knowledge, you don't lose anything. You don't lose any of the knowledge. And the last capability is the capability to share knowledge And this is what I call the distributed furnaces. By developing such capability, a very flexible organization can be created to create knowledge for society as well. Honda tried to promote people who were hardly hit when they were younger. This is what the Honda philosophy: respect for human beings and the three joys, to keep dream and knowledge, and also always continue to work very hard to do research and make efforts. So every single employee at Honda should be Soichiro Honda. Knowledge accumulated and the tradition must be shared. And if each single person becomes Soichiro Honda, it means denying Soichiro Honda. By creating knowledge by each individual, you need to exceed the level of Mr. Soichiro Honda. What each individual can do has limitation, and everybody has to be a leader, and that should be incorporated into a system. That is the way being implemented at 7-Eleven. At APCD, what we learned is the role model approach. When you meet with other persons with more severe disabilities than yours, they can be role models, and you remember their way of living. And this is the role model, and sharing the role model is very important. In Nonthaburi province, IO Center has been established. I asked one person with disability, what changed you? He said, because I met Boon-san. I asked the same question to Boon-san. He said, I met Ton-san. I asked the same question to Ton-san. Ton-san said, because I met with Mr. Nakanishi. Via the role models, they try to exceed the level of the role models. So this is the development and the succession of prudence, and I was deeply moved.
Now, coming to the conclusion, what I would like to say to you is that the implementation of APCD is not just an issue for persons with disabilities, but rather what we would like to do is to accumulate the knowledge which is more deep for the non-disabled as well. There is a deeper knowledge to be shared, both for those with disabilities and those without. And as a result, we are to make a better society with richer knowledge. And I would say that to be very important, which I have learned through my experiences. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. I thank you very much for your kind attention. I don't think I have fully digested your keynote presentation as of yet, but let me confirm one point that you have spoken of. Professor Nonaka, you have said that tacit knowledge is to change to explicit knowledge, and you said that the relationship between the two is so important, in which when your feelings are to be communicated to others, it is to be communicated through the relationship. For those with disabilities, in order to have their problems to be understood, you need to push it with exerting strong leadership, which is often approached as taken by the leaders. Even if it's people without the disabilities, there are many activities underway, especially by the Japanese NGOs, wanting to have the issue of disabilities to be included in the development project. When you say the relationship is important, persons with disabilities would have to be offensive all the time. But if that is the only approach, I don't think the other person is going to change. You said that Soichiro Honda has said that you need to share the same perspective, and in order for the other to change, you yourself or oneself would have to change. And I believe in that sense, the relationship and the mutual relationship means that one is to change at the same time. Is that true? And as regard to the sharing, in the book that you have written about the management based upon knowledge, I thought you were talking about companies, but as we share more and more of the sharing, it seems that it is important to share some perception, or is it that without any common knowledge, how is it that we need to do it? Is it to be done before the stage of socialization? Now, let me respond to the first question first. You are right in what you have pointed out, in which the basis in creating knowledge should be shared, in which you need to share the tacit knowledge. And if you are able to share the tacit knowledge, and in order to enable that, you need to empathize with the other. Otherwise, it is very difficult to share the tacit knowledge. Not limited to Buddhism, but Nishida philosophy or pure experiences in which you are to make yourself null and void. In other words, it means that you need to dispose of your own ego. As a result, at that point, you will be able to establish the relationship. In the beginning, you're going to nullify yourself, but by emphasizing with others, you'll be able to establish a stronger relationship through the empathy. And as a result, you shall be able to recognize yourself anew, so that one is to change. So to be able to sympathize and to empathize and to be able to share, so that here and now ba or the from is going to be so important. And I would say that to be very crucial at the outset, you need to start with yourself, but if you just analyze that, you are going to what is the most important is to share with others. And through trying to empathize with others, you have to have the capability to create the forum. As the leader who is authoritarian or authoritative, in which you are going to create the best possible relationship for that environment, as expressed by Mr. Soichiro Honda. He was great in cracking jokes, so that knowledge, care, love, trust, safety are the important emotions to be shared. And we talk about management based upon the knowledge, and at the hospital as an example, as you relate with the patients, what is the most important is, rather than trying to analyze the other, you are to share the tacit knowledge. And as a result, based upon the shared tacit knowledge, you are going to communicate with the other at the right timing. So even at the hospitals, the Seki model is being cherished so that you are to be able to share the bar and the farm. And they're advocating that they would like to study this, whether Nishida philosophy or Buddhism. These are some of the philosophies and religions that would base upon that which is being incorporated, for example, in hospitals and other settings. Thus, as you have pointed out, I think I would agree with you that you are right in what you have said. Thank you. Having listened to the keynote presentation by Professor Nonaka, at more or less the end of his presentation, he said the implementation of APCD should be understood by those who do not have disabilities in regard to its significance. On this very point, you might say, what are we to understand? And at the same time, what are we to implement? In that sense, here in this hall, it may be that we don't have the shared understanding as of yet. We're very fortunate to have 4 panelists with us who is going to give us their respective story. And we shall be able to share their stories here and now. And as a result, is it that we would know what to do, especially in the frame of the international cooperation, to create a better society, and how is it that we can exert better leadership? These are some of the issues that we would like to take up together with all of you. We would like to spend as much time as possible for the presentation, but before that, I'd like to give each panelist an opportunity to tell us his or her story. First of all, I'd like to ask Mr. Montian, who is the president of the Thailand Association of the Blind. Mr. Montian, as you probably know by now, is the president of Thailand Association of the Blind, but at the same time, he has been an advocate in regard to the Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities adopted at the United Nations, and he was very influential serving the interest of Asia, saying that here in Asia there's Mr. Montian. At the same time, there is the accessible information system in the name of DAISY. He's a professional, so that not limited to Thailand, but in Asia, in Oceania, he's very active in these fields. As a result, he has been awarded from the Prime Minister of Thailand as an outstanding individual who has made the biggest contribution to the lives of persons with disabilities in Thailand. At the same time, Mr. Montian is an artist. He's an excellent arranger of music. He's busy with being the president of Thailand Association of the Blind, but he is very talented in arranging of music as well. He has been involved with APCD activities from the incipient days. As a key person, he is one of the father of APCD, and I'm sure he would have many proposals for the future of APCD. Mr. Montian, please.
Konnichiwa. Thank you very much for such nice introduction. I feel very humble to hear that. And let me again express my thanks and appreciation to JICA for inviting me to be here to Japan, which is my second home. And let me bring the sincere greetings and warmest wishes from the Thai people to all people of Japan during this auspicious moment of joy for celebrating 120th anniversary of relationship between Thailand and Japan. As a person who has been involved in most, if not all, aspects of APCD since its birth. I'm very delighted to be asked to give my personal view and stories about this organization. I agree to do so with the hope that it will somewhat be helpful to form a good basis for this young, energetic, and emerging regional organization, leading to its success in accordance with goals and objectives, and most importantly, securing its sustainability. I think I'd like to emphasize the very last phrase, securing its sustainability. Sorry. First of all, when talking about APCD, I'd like to look at it again to try to understand what Professor Nonaka mentioned. We're not talking only about persons with disabilities, but we're talking about inclusive society. We're talking about barrier-free society. We're talking about rights-based society. And it is true, I'm a true believer as well, that we're in the process, in the era that the most effective process to achieve barrier-free, inclusive, and rights-based society is through knowledge creation and knowledge sharing. It just happened to be that persons with disabilities was perceivably the target of such task of becoming inclusive society. So in such a way, APCD is a learning tool for all of us to test such philosophy. I can say from my observation and can reflect my positive view to APCD programs and activities. For the past 5 years, I've been participating both as board member and resource persons in programs and activities, mainly in the ICT training, and also participating in seminars and trainings and other planning activities. I've been impressed with how the working environment has been shaped. Under any limitation or restriction, I've seen only hardworking and strongly committed people in the team, both disabled or non-disabled alike. The process in which we have worked together has been always sharing, discussion, and problem solving, ongoing process that has led to a successful conclusion for the most part. I want to see this working environment going on and even further developed, as it will definitely lead to prove our point that disabled people are able and capable of working as equal partner with non-disabled peers. We have to prove that, otherwise the goals and objectives of APCD would be only paper that has not been implemented. So we need to keep doing that. My second positive reflection of APCD goes to its task beyond its direct role. For the past 5 years, since its birth, APCD has involved itself directly and indirectly with many activities concerning the empowerment of persons with disabilities. Its existence and involvement have brought about positive environment for positive dialogues and engagement, which will guarantee positive results. We have witnessed the involvement of APCD in the implementation of BIWACO Millennium Framework and promoting the UN Convention process until its adoption. And I sincerely believe and hope that APCD will keep its role in this arena, especially now that we have the convention adopted and we're on our way to begin the BMF plus 5, which will be approved hopefully by the intergovernment meeting, high-level intergovernmental meeting in SCAP, at SCAP next month. So APCD has always been looked up in that manner, that it has taken the facilitating role, allowing several initiatives or forums to take place. Next, my hopes and dreams rely heavily on APCD administration and management. No matter how good the philosophy is, no matter how good activities and programs, and if you have a poor administration or management system, then you cannot really work. From the beginning, disability communities from Japan, Thailand, and throughout this region have made great efforts, individually and collectively, to see that this organization be designed as a living example of open, transparent, participatory, and most importantly, this is, I quote myself, disability-driven agency. Without any hesitation, I can say that I am very optimistic that we are moving towards that direction. We have done so, and we're moving even further towards that direction. We have seen good size of disability wing in the existing board of APCD, joint coordinating body between Thailand and Japan, JCC, and even APCD Foundation. I'm very honored to have served in all three bodies and have occasionally voiced my influence upon several decision-making policies. I look forward to see more participation by other energetic and capable disabled leaders. And I believe there are a lot of them here and a lot of them in this region. Not only in these three decision-making bodies, but also in the management team and the staff team. I believe such hope of mine is shared by all of us here. Don't you share with me? If APCD is to become a successful organization, moving upward to become regional and or international organization which win widely acceptance by disability communities and the public at large, we must remain open, we must remain participatory, and even more disability-driven. We have done so, we have to do more, both in principle and practice. And that, I seriously mean that any closed-door decision-making, especially those which may not be in favor of treating persons with disabilities as equal partners, in all aspects, should be avoided under any circumstances. The result of good management, open, transparent, participatory, and accessible. The partnership working environment have proven with good, fruitful results. For the past 5 years, we have seen tireless contribution from disability communities in Japan and Thailand and throughout the region as resource persons, consultants, active participants in changing the lives of disabled people, empowering ourselves and promoting barrier-free society. It is the first time that the concepts and ideas of inclusive, barrier-free and rights-based society, the idea of accessibility, the idea of anti-discrimination based on disability has been widely spread beyond the boundaries, beyond national boundaries, cultural boundaries, or linguistic differences. It is the first time in our history of this region that we have seen tremendous impact upon the lives of people with or without disability, covering a small village in Pakistan to the headquarters of United Nations in New York. From a ramp of a school building to more accessible transportation, from conventional way of knowledge sharing towards accessible web-based information service or even multimedia intelligent reading system like DAISY. All of that have proven that our underlying philosophy of empowerment of persons with disabilities and promoting barrier-free society has been well tested in this very much complex and diverse society of Asia. It has been beyond imagination of most, if not all of us, many years ago, that this would ever happen. But I still want to call your attention to something that I have in mind here, which is going to be my long-term concern, and that is about our vision, plan, and speed of internationalization of APCD. So far, I have seen somewhat little progress on and meaningful steps to help secure that APCD is to head or to become an international organization. I'm here to call upon all of us to help us for this great task, as we really have no time to waste if we are to achieve our majestic goals. And last but not least, let me reiterate that we, disability communities in Thailand and throughout the region, are very thankful to the government of Japan, especially JICA, and our Japanese friends with or without disabilities, here and elsewhere, for your genuine support from the beginning. we now have a living example of inclusive, barrier-free, and rights-based organization on disability through this monumental initiative. We need to nurture it, strengthen it, and move it further, not only for all of us here, but also for persons with disabilities throughout this region. And this is very much of my personal hope for everlasting friendship between our two beloved countries, which remain very close, I think closer than ever among countries in this region. I think we share so much similarity. We both constitutional monarchy system, and we share the same vision, and that's a vision for inclusive society. Persons with disabilities just happen to be in this process, but we hope it will help bring about great change towards society at large as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Montian. With the permission of Mr. Montian, I would like to share the fact that Mrs. Montian is a Japanese woman, and what Mr. Montian has said is not just his personal thoughts, but I would say that this is a strong commitment on part of Mr. Montian that he would like to work together with all of us. Thank you once again, Mr. Montian. We are somewhat behind this time, but I'd like to introduce Ms. Hiroko Akiyama and at the same time have an opportunity to hear from Ms. Akiyama. Ms. Akiyama is the Secretary General of the Center for Independent Living in Hino. She has progressive muscular disease since she was in high school, and she was one of the first experts from JICA to be sent to Thailand, Malaysia, and Pakistan as an expert with some disabilities. In the first half, Mr. Ninomiya introduced Mr. Teramiya. He is one of the person with disability in Thailand. In a sense, he gave up life, but he met Ms. Akiyama and found a new sense of living. As for those of us who are involved in APCD, we believe that she is the Madonna of APCD. She has touched many people, she has encouraged many people, and she's going to speak about the independent living at the beginning of her presentation and ask us to give us her story. Ms. Akiyama, please. Thank you for your introduction. This is Akiyama, as was introduced. Do you hear me through the microphone? It should not be me, but someone who's more experienced who should serve as a speaker. However, from 2002, I have been sent as a short-term expert representing JICA, and I am asked to share my experience and at the same time to explain to you about the independent living program in Japan. In addition, I'd like to speak about my involvement in such activities. At the outset, it was in 2002 that I have started to be involved in Thailand, and let me talk about what we plan to do in Thailand. We wanted to establish independent living center so that a person with disabilities would have the initiative so that they shall be the subject rather than the object. And in the process of establishing the independent living center in Thailand, since I am an expert on peer counseling as well as on the independent living program, I wanted to share this with persons with disabilities in Thailand so that they would have an opportunity to know what we do in Japan, so that they would have an opportunity to spread such efforts in Thailand. in which we shall be able to empower the persons with disabilities in Thailand. Please refer to the outline, but before doing so, let me talk about peer counseling and the independent living program so that you would know the content of what we try to share in Thailand. Then I would like to go on to the actual experiences in Thailand. Peer counseling means that the persons with disabilities are to look at themselves so that they would notice the capabilities that they have in order to regain their confidence. Often at times, persons with disabilities might be deemed as people without capabilities, that they have no sense. But rather than merely to regain and to cure the pain, what we are trying to do is to see that persons with disabilities are members of the society on an equal footing with those without disabilities, so that persons with disabilities would feel that they are the subjects. And that is something that we are to create and have them understand through the independent living program. We would like to have the power so as to be able to change the society. What is the objective of peer counseling? The big objective is that each person with disability would be independent. But in so doing, there are three aspects: to regain the self-confidence, to rebuild the relationship with other people, and to change the society. And these are the three major objectives of the peer counseling. You need to regain your self-confidence, and through that effort, you shall be able to rebuild more proactively the relationship with others around you. And once you are more proactive, then as a result, the society is going to change, and you are going to gain the power to be able to change the society, because you are to notice and recognize that you have that power. The persons with disabilities are going to be speaking with each other on an equal footing, so that we are not going to be critical. We are going to listen to others so that people are going to be comfortable to speak about themselves. The counselor and the client are going to trust each other so that the client is going to regain his or her confidence. The objective is not to share the difficulties, but rather to notice the wonderful things that you have in yourself. Just with one session of peer counseling, there are many people who have regained their confidence, and I have seen many occasions as that. And those who are going to be caregivers cannot join the peer counseling session, but during the breaks after the first or two sessions of the peer counseling, the caregivers are very surprised that they feel so much changes in the expressions of persons of disabilities. They may feel insecure at the beginning, and they may not know what is to happen, but after a session or two, the expressions do change substantially. Another point, which is equally important as peer counseling, is the independent living program, in which we wanted to share with our friends in Thailand. In 2002, we wanted to communicate the independent living program that we implement in Japan. This is through the experiences and information giving that you are to regain your confidence. There are some specific ways, like establishing relationship with the caregivers, how to use the money, and how you get onto a train as a person with disability, so that you are going to gain the knowledge necessary so as to make a living in your local community in an independent manner. At the same time, through the everyday life, you shall understand the needs of yourself and to be able to establish a way to live independently. And as a result, you are going to regain your confidence. This independent living program is to make use of the experiences and ways that you have gained as persons with disabilities, so that those who have gone through would pass on such experiences to knowledge to the next generations of persons with disabilities. Peer counseling is more or less through the knowledge, whereas the independent living program is through experiences, and through both ways, persons with disabilities are going to have capabilities to live in the community. When we are to provide the assistance, we don't give guidance, but rather we merely try to assist that persons with disabilities will be able to notice the capabilities that they have on their own. And at the same time, the empowerment is just to provide the opportunity so as to have the person with disabilities to realize what they have. Now, when we talk about independence here, probably you understand by now, as for those of you who are in the hall, but it doesn't mean that we would have to do from A to Z on your own. What we are saying that you are to be able to live by yourself, exerting the initiative based upon your choice of how you would like to lead your life. That is what we mean by independence and independent living. Especially 2002 was independent living program, and 2003 we focused on peer counseling program, and this is what we have communicated to our colleagues in Thailand and other countries. These are the basic ingredients of empowerment. Next, what did we do in Thailand, and how did we implement this in Thailand will be the next subject I would like to take up, so that how is it that it has spread to those without disabilities as well. In Thailand, it was in 2002 that we communicated the movement of independent living and shared the ingredients of the program of the independent living, as shown in the photographs of Mr. Ninomiya, in which there were some photographs of role-playing, so that it was a role-playing in which the parents would oppose of the marriage between two persons with disabilities. These are the actual methods resorted to, so that in the first training, in Nonthaburi Chaburu, and another village, leaders have participated, and in the following, up until the following year, they were going to implement that so as to execute the independent living program, so that they are to find the mid-level people with disabilities and ask them to participate in the program. As they do so, those who have participated in the first year program are going to be the leaders, so that they would share their experiences with their colleagues. And at the same time, there are many persons with disabilities who are almost bedridden in their homes for 20, 30 years, but they are going to take a first step to be out of their home, so that they shall be able to take care of themselves, so that it's not that everything is to be done by their family members. This is what we have carried out in Nonthaburi, Nakhon Pathom, and Chonburi, 3 provinces. And that's how we have implemented the independent living program. Now, moving along to 2003, we went on to carry out the peer counseling. Those who have served as the leaders in the previous year participated. At the same time, for those who have participated in the independent living program, many with severe disability have participated. They were bedridden, and they were not even on a wheelchair. So we even had people on bed, so they could lie down when they want, or they might even experience being on a wheelchair during the program, so that it was difficult for many to participate every day. There were those who only participated for a day because there were those people with severe disabilities who participated in the program of peer counseling, and we were able to spread the efforts in that sense. It was good for the leaders to lead those from their own community because they were able to fully appreciate what they have done. And for those with severe disabilities, they have now come to recognize what they can do, which was very significant for them as a result of the peer counseling courses. At the very end of the training, we carried out the interview, and there was one with cerebral palsy, severe disability. He said that I don't need to participate in this training next year. Why? Because he said this was an excellent training, so that this is an opportunity that was given to him, but he'd like to pass on the opportunity to another person with disability the next time around. He said he was lucky this time around that he participated. There are other persons with disabilities who have almost never left home because of severe disabilities. So this was a very impressive comment. He is the leader of the peer counseling at the Independent Living Center, nurturing the next generation of the leaders. He's active even today.
And they try to master peer counseling, and there are support groups so that they can continue peer counseling and promote peer counseling to persons with disabilities one after another. That was also how peer counseling developed in Japan, and the same is also happening in Thailand naturally. So the leaders of the independent living centers in Thailand are the third generation or the fourth generation leaders. And their participants who took part in the training in the second year with severe disabilities, they were almost bedridden and they were taken care of by their family members, but they decided to go into society to become involved with independent living. And that person thought that he or she was a burden to the family members, and he or she thought that he couldn't do anything for the sake of the families. But actually, this has changed. It's not an economic dependence, but psychological dependence, what to do, and a decision to be made for the family is something family members try to depend upon him. Nobody asked for his opinion, but he was just received care, but he became a main pillar or main player in his family member. He came to Japan for training, and he's expanding the scope of his activities, and he is also attending APCD trainings. Last year, I went to Pakistan, and I conducted peer counseling training for female people with disabilities. In Pakistan, there's a person called Mr. Shafiq. He came to Japan and he came to know about IL movement in Japan. He brought back the idea to Pakistan for promotion, and independent living centers have been promoted in Pakistan. You may remember that there was a very big earthquake which hit Pakistan some years ago, and ladies with disabilities were hard hit by the quake. They were in the rubbles of the houses destroyed by the earthquake. So in the mountainous regions, 4 independent living centers were established to promote peer counseling. I was also involved, and I visited women with disabilities. As you may know, in the Islamic world, it's also difficult for women to go outside because of the opposition from the family members. on day one, some of the participants came to the training because their family members allowed them to go because it's the first day, but they didn't know whether they can attend the second day. But they came once again, and their facial expressions began to change, and the family members thought that they should allow them to participate in the training. And they couldn't persuade the families initially, but they were able to communicate the benefits of the training. So they developed such capabilities to communicate the benefits to the family members. And the family members' view also changed accordingly. So little by little, the surrounding society can also change. So under those circumstances, there is the so-called access activity going on in Japan. At most of the stations in Tokyo, elevators can be used to enhance the convenience. But 10 years ago or so, there were only stairs, and when persons with disabilities go to the station, they have to ask the station officials to carry them to the platform. And others around them thought that something special is being done, or persons with disabilities are treated specially. But despite this, people with more experience approached the stations to change, and society changed as it began to think that elevators may be necessary at stations. Those who need something must say that they need certain things, otherwise nothing can change. Elevator is one example. In the activities or movement for persons with disabilities, we were saying that elevators will enhance their convenience, but actually elevators can be used by other people in society. When we were implementing the activities for persons with disabilities, the society as a whole had a negative view. But there was a gradual change. The mothers with the babies in the baby cars also sympathized, and if they have babies, they wanted to carry the baby cars into the trains. And such mothers began to notice that they can also express their needs, like PWD, and they began to do the same. And then the access in society is gradually improving these days. Maybe I may be spending too much time, so I'd like to stop here. Thank you very much. Ms. Akiyama, thank you very much. Families begin to depend on PWD. Society begins to depend on PWD. And social changes are made or promoted by the leaders of persons with disabilities. And we were able to hear actual examples or cases. We are very much behind the schedule because of my problem. So I'd like to ask the two remaining speakers to be brief in the presentations. The next speaker is Mr. Hideki Kawada. When he was in university, he wondered where a human came from. He wanted to study the universe, and he joined the Department of Astrophysics, but he also went on to the graduate school of Hitotsubashi University to study under Professor Nonaka. He is also a teaching assistant. Every year, he goes to deep into the mountains of Nepal to teach children about their studies and provide support. That's an annual event for him. Mr. Kawada is not the person who has been involved with providing support to persons with disabilities, but having said so, he can share his very fresh viewpoint. My name is Kawada from Hitotsubashi University. Nice to meet you all. At the university, I'm called Hideki. So as Professor Nonaka said, please ask further questions to Hideki, but please do not ask me difficult questions. Toda-san said that I went to Bangkok initially. I went there for January and I was told to share my impressions. I have many different feelings and it's difficult to express and explain. But I was there for a week and returned to Japan. And my wife asked me, how was it? I said, it was really great. What was great? And I had to explain further. It was my tacit knowledge. I want to communicate what I felt and share my experiences and my feelings. I came to encounter with APCD in November last year. JICA organized Knowledge Society Creation Seminar. Professor Nonaka gave a talk and APCD was talked about. Mr. Topon and Mr. Ninomiya were there as speakers. I happened to meet with Topon-san to work together in Jimbocho in Tokyo. I supported him in his wheelchair. Mr. Topon said that he was able to become happy thanks to his disability. I wondered, what does that mean? Topo-san said that disability is not a loss, but a gain. So I also wondered, what is APCD? And then JICA asked me to go to Thailand to write a case study. What I kept in mind is like Professor Nonaka's knowledge creation theory, I have to start with socialization to share knowledge. You have to nullify yourself to have empathy. So I tried to nullify myself to feel something. But I was told by JICA to write a report and case study, so I was kind of pressured, so I was rather analytical. And I went to DPI to meet with Topon-san and other persons with disabilities. And I asked questions like, what is empowerment? But it was still difficult for me to understand what is APCD. On the second day in Non-Tabli province, I went to Independent Living Center with Ninomiya-san. And I asked very stupid questions to be very analytical. One person with disability showed me one picture. According to that person, for more than 20 years, that person was bedridden. He didn't care what's going on in society. But once he came to know about IO Center and program at APCD, he was energized. The picture was of that person in underwear, alone, on a bed. And he showed that picture to me, saying that this was his former self and his former lifestyle. But at that time, he was already very energetic. He was wearing a very nice yellow polo shirt and trousers. So what changed you? I asked that question like Professor Nonaka. He said he changed because he met with Poon-san. Poon-san also has a severe disability. I asked this question to Poon-san. He said he changed because he met Ton-san. I asked the same question to Ton-san, and Ton-san said he changed because he met with Nakanishi-san. He met during the APCD training. So I thought this is really great. On day 3 in Nakampotam, I was visiting the center together with Mr. Ninomiya. And I wanted to interview every single person in the IO Center. Persons with disability, there was one person with very severe burns. I'm very embarrassed to say, but I couldn't really look at that person clearly. But I still remember that person's smile with very shiny eyes. And that person welcomed me. Terawato-san, Santi-san, Atipon-san, and others who were there talked about the stories after having disabilities. Then I was attracted by their stories. I was intrigued, and I was also very much encouraged. And I just noticed that I was being empowered by them. In members of the non-Tabli province are the ones I met. I visited some of their homes. In a fight against gangs, that person had a bullet wound in the neck to have a disability, and his mom in her 70s also came along. And I asked his mother the following question, and she said that she was very glad that her son has changed. My mother passed away 10 years ago, but I was very much moved by the mother. So the project which can change the mindset, not only the persons with disabilities, but also their mothers, is really great. And I spent a lot of time with Ninomiya-san during my stay, and I went to stand at night, and we were drinking together at the store, and there should be something as a basis to share what is good in human nature. I also have weaknesses myself, so there's no difference between people with or without disabilities. After returning to Japan, I still remember the faces of people with disabilities who looked really happy and energetic. When I tried to write a report, when I was kind of drowsing, I began to remember their very happy faces. And I thought that I have to work hard like them. And so they empower me. And I also feel some connection or linkage between persons or humans that's related to the barrier-free society promotion advocated by APCD.
Thank you so much. I would have wanted to give you more time to give us more stories, but would you like to say a word? Akiyama-san has said, it is important to recognize the wonderfulness of oneself. And Mr. Kawada has said that as a premise, you are to share the weaknesses, the vulnerabilities, and that's where there shall be source of strength. In a way, it sounds paradoxical, but by linking these two, I think we are able to change the society and the world. So I'd like to give another opportunity to ask Mr. Ninomiya, our leader, but was it in the Philippines that there was one of the experiences? And for many years, JICA has been involved in the capacity development in which we are to establish and nurture the capability of the people. Could you just give us the highlights? Well, APCD is involved in so many programs, and CB Shot, independent and self-help programs, and this time around it's an access-related project. We have 35 projects in 5 years' time, and this time around, capacity development and knowledge-based society would be the key. So let me give you the example in the Philippines. This is Mr. Jamie Sylvia. He has lost his sight after he became an architect, and he has been a leader of promoting accessibility for those with disability, criticizing the government, criticizing the society. He's been a fighter, saying that there has been no progress. What has he learned having joined the APCD program? He felt that it is important to link with the government and the society. He changed his strategy. And as a result, the banks have established ramps, same with the restaurants. When I interviewed Mr. Silver, he said that there is so much progress in accessibility, presenting me with a document which is that thick. He said, having learned it is important to have the relationship through the APCD seminar, he felt that he was able to do more. When I talked about this to the Deputy Prime Minister of the Philippines, he said that was great. And the Ministry of Social Welfare has said, this is wonderful, we should make it a national plan. And they said that they would like to make it into a bigger program. Now, Jamie-san, when he participated in the program, this was in Bangkok, in which JBIC has provided yen loan, and those with disabilities, users, experts from the government who on the topic of accessibility, and engineers were brought in so that they would have an opportunity to meet with people that they don't get to see through APCD. All what they have learned was incorporated into the subway that was under construction. Those who were at the site of the construction felt that was interesting, so they participated in the APCD training, and the next year around, they became the leaders of such programs. And as a result, the whole subway became accessible. It was not our intent. It was that we just created the opportunity. But as a result, thanks to the capability of those with disability, the subway became accessible. The person on the left is the Deputy Minister, and they had dined and wined. And to your right is someone from the Philippines Architect Association, and Mr. Matsuda from JICA participated, and also the Deputy Minister for Social Welfare of the Philippines have participated. They sang, they dined, they wined. On the following day, at the National Council for the Welfare of the Disabled Person, we decided to have the workshop in which people with disability, people who are from the architects and the governments have participated, and JICA has provided the funds in which 17 regions were represented, so that policy makers from the local governments were represented. And from APCD, we invited the expert from Hong Kong, and together with Jamie, they participated in the program. And we went around to the shopping center, created lots of bars and fora. And Novia Vizcaya, which is way out from Manila, taking about 10 hours. And persons with disabilities decided to do the same, so as to encourage the Speaker of the Assembly, the fathers from Catholic churches and others were mobilized. And these are the persons with disabilities who arranged the opportunity. We went and we had dinner together. They provided the funds and they organized the training session. As a result, the Ministry of Health building was not accessible. As a result, the politician committed that it's going to be made accessible. They've appropriated the budget for that, and they said that they run the cafeteria, but they don't have their home. But these were the people who didn't have money even to have a home, but they were the ones who provided us with a wonderful opportunity for dining and wining. And in a way, I was empowered by the capability that they had. And there is SM Supermart. Hendy Hay is a super rich person who is said to be the richest, and he has more than 20 supermalls. There's one close to Manila, which is called the Mall of Asia, the biggest mall in Asia. The total number of employees is 250,000, and the whole shopping mall became accessible. At the presentation of SCAP, this SM shopping mall was presented. And the role of SM Supermall in promoting a non-handicapped environment, so that it is the role on part of the company to make an environment that's friendly to everybody, whether it is the security guards or those who do the cleaning. They were being trained about accessibility, so that all the employees were trained about what it meant to be accessible. And the whole building was made accessible, including of the bathrooms. And they had an open seminar with 200, 300 people, and they even launched a campaign to hire those with disabilities. And even more, he encouraged the Philippines Architect Association, so that he serves as the chair of Accessible Committee. United Architect of the Philippines, UAP, has decided to award the P, and President Ayolo would give the award to the recipient. This is how we've gone in terms of capacity development. What we can say is that it is included in the handouts of the APCD. Jamie-san, was he developed his capacity, or was he able to encourage the Philippines Architect Association so that the Architects Association itself was able to develop the capacity? Or it may be that the National Commission for the Disabled were empowered so that they made their own organization to be accessible, so that it went up to have the policy formulated. Now it's not limited to the government, but even to the private sector. The capacity development has 3 entry points in which we talk about the empowerment community type. And like Ms. Akiyama, as an example, talked about the independent living program, that's empowerment. And CBR is the community type in which you create the bar, the forum, and the second is to establish the forum. Different kinds of organizations are going to be taught about accessible. ICT was not mentioned a lot today, but whether it's communication or information. Ms. Chiba-san is here, who's just back from honeymoon, in which all the people with disabilities are to have their accessibility. And most of the instructors are totally visually challenged. And if it's computer courses, what's going to be done with visually challenged? Well, the visually challenged are using the computers, and whether it's the policy decision makers or the school teachers, they talk about the accessibility of the information, accessibility of the building, accessibility of the train. The third point is for the policy related. This is being carried out in Laos. What is interested is that we involve the organizations who are involved in disability, so they serve as advocates, and they would be able to lead in having the policy to be established. It is like an eddy swirling. Country A, country B, and they influence each other, as you see in the following slide. This is an evolution in which I have decided that this is the mechanism that is going to be evolving in its process. You would have the independent living center and the more independent living centers, whether at the provincial or national level. The Thai government has made this to be a model project, so it has resulted in becoming a policy. In case of Jamie, he advocated the accessibility, it became a policy, it was implemented in a subway, so it is like an eddy, a swirling in which it is evolving as a process in Asia. So in phase 2, it's going to be sub-regional, like Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Northeast Asia, etc., in which we are going to have lots of these tornado-type eddies to spread in Asia itself. There's a focal point on part of the government. They are a collaborative organization, more than 600 graduates of the training session, so that in the Asian Pacific, we're going to have lots and lots of eddies in which it is not limited to people with disability, but they are going to be involved in creating a society which is barrier-free, which is a comfortable environment for everybody, whether you have disabilities or not. It's 5:11 at the moment. If we could have your permission, we are supposed to finish at 5:30, but can we extend until 5:35 or 5:40? For those who have other commitments, you can leave. Now, for the next 15 or 20 minutes, we'd like to exchange opinions with you. And at the end, I'd like to give 2 to 2.5 minutes to each panelist before closing. So it's going to take too much time if we have the response for each question. So let's have a few questions and ask the panelists to respond to multiple number of questions. For the first round, let me use the prerogative as the moderator and ask 3 people to raise comments or questions. There is someone from Vietnam who wanted to speak. I don't know who it is, but can we start off with having a question from Vietnam as a starter? And Madame Nakanishi, I'd like to ask Madame Nakanishi, you've had good relationship with JICA. I'd like to have some words from you. And then from Mori-san from the Asian Research or Asian Institute, if we could have comments from 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes.
You have a lot of discussion about disability people's organizations, and in each of the countries, it strikes me that in every one of the countries, you have to work with government as well. Does that make things easier or harder for JICA and APCD?
As Akiyama-san said, for many years, through independent living movement, living of the PWD in community has been achieved, and PWD was not allowed to express their voice in the past. But finally, the situation has changed, and people with severe disabilities are also given opportunities and empowered, and that has been the achievement of APCD. What we, people with disabilities, want is not the facility where our living needs are met, but we'd like to live an independent life, which may have difficulties as well as joys. And as a good news, IL activities in Japan have been communicated to Asia. APCD activities may be seen as something to favorably treat PWD and discriminate, have a reverse discrimination against people without disability, but in reality, PWD are not in an equal position with people without disability, so there still can be some handicaps on the part of the PWD. And Professor Nonaka said if the disability is more severe, there can be a bigger impact. So I hope that 51% decision-making rate is ideal, like the PWD in the United States is calling for. People with severe disabilities have deep knowledge. They have joys and sorrows, but through peer counseling, something good can be happening to them in life, and you can communicate this to each other. So that's the meaning of deep knowledge. A PWD, we have to be able to live a positive life, and their knowledge has led to the growth and the further development of APCD to this extent. Thank you very much. Mori-san from Asia Institute, could you give us your comments or questions? I was given 2 minutes. My name is Mori from Asia Institute. I have 3 comments. I'd like to comment on 3 points. First, as Professor Nonaka said, empathy is something I'd like to touch upon. From persons without disability to persons with disabilities. I understand that kind of empathy, but persons with disabilities are receiving support. So PWD may also have an empathy so that persons without disabilities understand their situations, but that might be very difficult, so we have to think about it. And secondly, as Nomiya-san said, there was a presentation on the example in the Philippines 3 days ago. I was in the Philippines up to 3 days ago for 2 weeks. I just returned to Japan. I met people in the Philippines at APCD. From its perspective, leaders with disabilities require training, and there has been a great achievement in that area, but there are problems as well. At the grassroots level, I wonder whether that has reached that level, and what have been the achievements as the public at large. So those can be the challenges for the future, and we have to think about these issues more into the future. And the third is a very important issue. In the case of APCD, as Nakanishi-san said, she has been involved since the inception. Involvement with a DPI is very deep. Because of this, for example, in APCD activities, DPI has a variety of features, and there is also influence in a good way, but also at the same time, DPI's culture. In order to strengthen it, groups of people with other disabilities, such as hearing impairment, DPI has a certain culture, and people who are deaf and mute do not have such culture, so there is some gap or difference. So APCD must incorporate the differences in a better way to have a better involvement. So these are the 3 comments I'd like to make here. Mori-san, thank you very much. On the last point, as you may know, in our phase 2 activities, the leaders who are deaf and mute are participating in the preliminary survey. Activities to cover a variety of disabilities is something we'd like to try to build our culture. We received a question from Richard-san about the relationship with the government, and also Mori-san referred to the case of the Philippines, whether the achievement has reached.
Richard, I speak in Japanese, but somebody can translate for you.
At APCD, Richard, there are 3 caps we are wearing. APCD is a government organization. It belongs to the Department of Social Development and Social Welfare and Human Development in Thailand. So, in principle, it's a bilateral, intergovernmental, technical cooperation provision organization. But in practice, we are equally working with international organizations. We create the bar or forum, and then international organizations of PWD come to that forum. So we create a lot of opportunities and forums. Our 3rd cap is, in addition to the role as NGO, we are endorsed by UN SCAP, the Asian and Pacific Decade for People with Disabilities, to create an inclusive society without any discrimination. We want to create a barrier-free society based on Chapter 6. APCD is an implementation agency according to the official documents of the United Nations. So there is the approval or of certification by the United Nations. When we go for a mission, we meet with the top government officials. And NGO and grassroots representatives also accompany us, and the leaders of those countries come with us. So we create such a forum so that NGO and the government can meet together. And there are many different countries, socialist and others, so we changed the menu. In the case of Vietnam, when we started, there was only 1 union for the blind, which has been certified. Other PWD's organizations have to belong to other organizations, but they do not have a real presence in their names. National Council for the National Committee for PWD in the Vietnam allow organizations to register themselves. What's interesting is that women with disabilities began to take action to collaborate with the unions. So I want people in Vietnam to learn more about us so that you can utilize us. As for the comment by Mori-san, we are going into the grassroots in the Philippines, Manila, and also the smallest province in the Philippines were also visited. In the village of Balam, there is a group for the PWD and accessibility to health centers in the village, and also public schools, social offices, and market is something to be improved. JICA Philippines has a 5-year plan. Grassroots facilities must be more accessible, and that process is going to start. We created the project by spending 1.5 years, and initially we created kind of textbook as a model for 10 provinces, and we'd like to create a system in all 49 provinces. When I went to Manila a few months ago, there is a big town called Makati, and they have a town meeting or gathering, and access has improved in such small communities. So please visit such places if you have a chance next time. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm really sorry, but it's already 5:28. But we'd like to entertain questions from the floor in the audience. If you raise your hand, I will take questions. If you do not have enough time, we will try to respond to your questions through email. So we appreciate your understanding. Are there any questions from the participants? If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. Before asking a question, please identify yourself, mention your name and affiliation.
Nagase-san and the woman behind her. Microphone, please. Speak into the microphones. Thank you very much. My name is Nagase. Inclusion International is an affiliation that I am a member of, which is to support the family as well as the mentally challenged. I do appreciate for this wonderful opportunity today. This is related to what Mr. Modi said earlier, but in the first phase, you have focused on the physical challenged and the visually challenged, so that you were able to solicit the participation of those with disabilities, which I welcome. I wouldn't necessarily stress that all the persons with disabilities should be on equal footing in being involved. In that sense, it was nice to have a trigger, a starting point, and what we need is to spread it more and more. And in the course, I do appreciate that the mentally challenged as well as the visually challenged are to be included. But as Montaigne-san has said, it is not only at the decision-making level, but at the management level or the staff level. How is it that you are going to solicit the participation of those with disabilities? I don't know who is going to be the respondent, but I would like one of you to shed light on this in regard to what is to be done in the future. I am also a board member, a Secretary General of the Disabilities Study. But when we talk about severe disabilities, we have talked about using the word impairment. But in terms of the social model, when you talk about severe disabilities, it was more or less equal to severe disadvantaged. But it is not linked to the severity of the impairment. The impairment may be mild, but it may be that you might have serious disadvantage in the society. And I think that's one of the crux of the issue in the activities of the APCD in the future. Are you going to severe the impairment and disability? So when you talk about severe disability, I do hope that you would focus and shed light to the severe disadvantage in the society. Thank you very much. My name is Yoshimura. I'm a student. I have started studying about those with disabilities, and it's only been a year. I may be off the point, but I heard the presentation about different programs underway in different countries, and as was raised in the question, to know what is being done for those who have the mentally challenged. Thank you very much. Nagase-san's first question. Probably we should ask Mr. Montian to respond. The future management of APCD, the participation of people with different kinds of disabilities. You serve as a board member. Maybe you can shed light about the vision of the future direction of APCD. Severe disability and impairment. That's a very difficult issue, but I'd like to invite Ms. Akiyama to give us a short comment. The mentally challenged, I'd like to ask Mr. Ninomiya to respond. Starting with Mr. Montian, would you care to respond, please?
Thank you very much. I'm a firm believer in the idea of the people we are working with as partners. We cannot just preach the principle. We have to really practice it. If we believe in empowerment of persons with disabilities, we have to really transform our belief into real practice. The working of APCD cannot only a one-sided work, and disabled people cannot only be recipients of assistance or help. We have to be able to shape it, exchange ideas and knowledge, and contribute to the maximum extent possible. APCD so far has served as a place for people to exercise differences in their approach. My approach may be a bit different from our colleagues, some colleagues here. I believe in multilateral approach to disability, or I invent a term called interdisability. It would be very colorful and beautiful if APCD will comprise at the board level, management level, staff level, people with different types of disabilities, with different talents and capability. These people will bring different experience, different challenges, and different answers to different problems. So that's how I view, and I'm going to try to do my best to influence this thinking. I serve in the board of APCD, board of APCD Foundation, and also in the JCC. So I'm going to try to see how I can transform this thinking to shape the direction of how we involve people with differences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. JICA is nothing more than a supporter, but on this very issue, I think JICA is in full agreement with the philosophy and the thinking on part of Mr. Montian, and JICA stands ready to provide any assistance so we can realize what you said. The second is disability and impairment. Ms. Akiyama, can you shed some light on that question? It's very difficult to respond to that in a short span of time. And I don't think I shall be able to respond to the question posed. However, having said that, whether it's peer counseling or independent living program, the activities of Independent Living Center is not to discriminate people with different kinds of disabilities, but rather to assist. It's true that we started off by providing more support to those with physical disability, but whether it's the mental or the visual disabilities, we have been providing assistance to people with different types of disabilities. For the peer counseling program, we have trained those with the mental and visual disabilities so that we do have peer counseling programs provided for different kinds. And it's true that we have spread our efforts to people with different disability. What is going to be the definition of serious disabilities? In Thailand, we have provided the training, and most of the recipient or the trainees were physically challenged. But at the Independent Living Center in Thailand, it was in December last year that in Thailand, we have had a follow-up session of the leaders of peer counseling so that they had the opportunity to talk about the issue they face. And in reality, they said the differences are not important. The mentally challenged are being provided the assistance, and we discussed about what kind of assistance we are to provide. So they are spreading their efforts to other challenged people from different types of disability. There was a question about the mentally challenged. It was August this year. We are going to start the second phase. And for those with mentally disabled as well as deaf, we are going to have the program to be expanded. And project design is already established, so you have a lot to expect. If I may add to the question as raised by Nagase-san, for those who are going to serve as a short-term expert, APCD has no classification about severity of the disability, but more we focus on the disadvantaged socially. For example, those who have been bedridden at home for 20 years, they are severely disabled, because even the severely disabled might be working in a company. They are not the recipients of a program. So we would like to have more advice from you. And we would want you to lead us. So in the phase 2, Thailand and JICA are going to be working together so as to include the mentally challenged as well, so that they are going to be the participants in the program rather than to be recipients. The experts and the parents are nothing more than supporters in such programs. I talked about with the Director General of Human Development, and I asked whether the mentally challenged can be a JICA expert. And he said, of course, it is not just what degrees you have, what papers you've written, but JICA experts could be any kind of people who have the rich experiences to be able to empower others. This is a big change on part of JICA, and as one related to JICA, I'm proud of that. JICA is going to change enormously from now on. Thank you so much, Mr. Ninomiya. Last but not the least, I said 2 minutes to each speaker, but just a minute. I do apologize, but I'd like to give each panelist an opportunity to speak for 1 minute. Mr. Kada can have 1 minute and 30 seconds. Okay, Mr. Montian, would you give a message to the audience or to Japan using 1 minute, please?
Thank you. I'll be very short. I'd like to leave here with a message that APCD has to be a knowledge-based center if it is going to be sustainable, because sharing of knowledge is a symbolic way of sharing of power. Without power, nothing can be changed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Akiyama, please. JICA and APCD has focused on those with disability, especially those with severe disabilities, and I am very much encouraged that those are to be focused. if we are to talk about the severely disabled, they are the ones who feel that there are lots of needs to be met. And if these people are to be addressed, then I believe that we shall be able to make changes in the society in that sense. I do hope that you would expand your efforts to those with different types of disabilities as well as to different countries as well. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you for the message, Ms. Akiyama. Mr. Kawada. Thank you for being one of the panelists. I have learned a lot. I've obtained a lot of information. It's not that I have fully digested all of such, what I've heard. But as for those I've met at the Independent Living Center, I like to see them once again. And since we are told that we are going to have phase 2, one day I like to revisit them. Thank you very much, Mr. Kawada. And Mr. Ninomiya, last but not the least. As a chief advisor of JICA, I have been working for the last 5 years. I have deep appreciation, but at the same time, I feel the major changes on part of JICA because I can foresee that major changes are going to be brought forth by those with disabilities. JICA's culture is going to be inclusive, barrier-free. Mr. Kaneko is here, but JICA is going to accept those with disabilities to be more or less normal. There are many short-term experts who are those with disabilities, and they have come up with major achievements in order to have the human security and to have the empowerment on part of the people. I believe that this has to start with JICA, in which JICA has to change its organization. I have been inspired. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a very heavy message. We have to take note of. Mr. Kaneko, the director, stayed with us until the very end. JICA, as a whole, would like to keep that in mind to make continuous efforts to that end. We apologize for extending the seminar by 20 minutes, but we'd like to close the panel discussion here. And there should be questions we couldn't answer today. There's a questionnaire sheet. Please write your questions and how we can contact you to reply. Before closing, we'd like the audience to give a big round of applause to the panelists here. Ladies panel, I'd like to thank panelists and all the